From Cakeland, this is Emmy award-winning Cake News.
Vote 2014 is now underway. Good evening. It is finally Election Day in Cakeland, and Kansas voters have some big decisions to make.
Very big ones, and we have team coverage of the 2014 vote, beginning with Cake's Annette Lawless. She is now live at the Sedgwick County Election Office. Annette.
That's right, Larry. You know, it's all hands on deck when it comes to this election. And now here at the Sedgwick County Elections Office, staff members tell me they are ready to tabulate that data from the different polling locations. And they, of course, say that polls will close in just a few hours. So keep that in mind if you want to vote today. Now, I visited a polling spot across the street from the election office, and they say they've been incredibly busy today. And they expect things will pick up as things with the workday will end for folks out here. Now, in Sedgwick County, they say advanced voting, it seems to be a bit up this year. Across the state, more than 230,000 people have casted their ballots with advanced voting. So as a reminder, if you do want to go and cast your ballot today, you need to head out to a polling location. Most polling locations close at 7 o'clock. Anticipate possible longer lines. And if you are in line by 7, you should be eligible to vote. Reporting live in downtown Wichita, Annette Lawless, Cake News.
Right, Annette, thank you. And, of course, one of the most hotly contested races in Kansas is, of course, the race for U.S. Senate.
Incumbent Pat Roberts in a close race with independent candidate Greg Orman. Cake's Deb Ferris live in Topeka with the Roberts campaign. Deb.
Yeah, we are at the Republican watch party. You can see behind me, it's very quiet now. They have all the tables set up. They're starting to get the food set up there for all the people who are expected to gather here to watch as those results come in tonight. And then back behind this curtain, you can see this is where all the media is setting up, all kinds of TV stations from all over the area, some even national television stations here to watch this very tight race between incumbent Pat Roberts and Greg Orman. Now, we'll be watching Pat Roberts very closely. This race has come down to the wire, with Pat Roberts being ahead by 1 point, then Greg Orman being ahead. Pat Roberts, some say, is just simply too old. He spent way too much time, and that Greg Orman, someone new, needs to take his spot in the U.S. Senate. Of course, all national eyes will be on this race as the Democrats may give up their control of the Senate. Of course, we will continue to watch this race and bring you all the updates tonight on Cake News. We are live in Topeka. Deb Ferris, Cake News.
Thanks, Deb. And, of course, Roberts' opponent in the U.S. Senate race, independent candidate Greg Orman.
Cake's Lily Wu live in Johnson County with the Orman campaign. Lily.
Susan and Larry, we're here at the Overland Park Convention Center. Now, this is an empty room right now, but we're expecting to have supporters as well as Greg Orman here after the polls closed around 7 o'clock tonight. Now, Orman is the independent on that ballot for U.S. Senate. He is also on that ballot with incumbent Republican Pat Roberts as well as Libertarian Randall Batson. Now, we did hear from his campaign, and they told us that Orman did cast a ballot earlier this morning. So we do expect him to be at the convention center around 7 o'clock tonight, and we will continue tracking the story for you. Just keep it right here on Cake. Reporting live from Overland Park, Lily Wu, Cake News.
Thanks, Lily. And, of course, another big race we're following. Republican Governor Sam Brownback facing a challenge from his Democratic challenger, Paul Davis. Cake's Madeline Anderson is now live in Topeka following the Brownback campaign. Madeline.
Yes, supporters should be arriving here later this evening, and of course, Governor Sam Brownback, he will be arriving later this evening as well. Now, earlier today, the governor made 2 final campaign stops, one at the Johnson County Republican Party headquarters in Overland Park, and one at the Kansas Republican headquarters in Topeka. Now, volunteers with his campaign are also making calls up until the polls close at 7, encouraging people across the state to get out and vote. Experts say the race for governor will come down to voter turnout. The latest poll shows Governor Brownback just 1 point behind his Democratic challenger, Paul Davis. And that's much closer than what the poll said just a week ago. And Brownback's campaign says they are confident heading into tonight. Reporting live in Topeka, Madeline Anderson, Cake News.
And our coverage of the governor's race continues with the Democratic challenger, Paul Davis. Cake's Mike Ewan now live in Lawrence tracking the Davis campaign. Mike.
Yes, we're at the Paul Davis Election Night Watch Party. You can see things are getting set up with the balloons and the monitors in the background. We're expecting to hear from Paul Davis's running mate, Jill Docking, the lieutenant governor candidate, sometime within the next hour, and we'll bring some of that interview to you. But recently I had the chance to sit down with Paul Davis, the Democratic candidate for governor, and here's some of that conversation we had.
This decision by Governor Brownback was a penny-wise and pound-foolish decision.
Paul Davis has served in the Kansas House of Representatives since 2003. The Lawrence attorney is married with a daughter. He was elected House Minority Leader in 2008. And he says he takes pride in the fact that he's been able to look beyond party labels to find solutions for the state's problems.
I have a history of bringing Democrats and Republicans together to form coalitions to address the major issues.
Davis is highly critical of the governor's economic plan that has called for massive tax cuts for businesses that he says have not produced the desired results.
And this trickle-down economics approach to growing the economy has been tried before, and it has failed before.
And Davis is highly critical of school funding, which is $548 less on a per-student basis than it was 6 years ago. He says most of the increased spending has been on the school pension system and capital improvements after the state Supreme Court stepped in requiring the equalization of school funding.
Instead has cut our schools. We've seen the larger class sizes. We've seen the test scores go down. We've seen the teachers that have left the profession.
Davis says he wants to put money back into education and work across the aisle to help the state's finances.
We're going to bring Democrats and Republicans together when we at all possibly can to try to address the major problems of the state, and I've got a history of doing that.
So far, the polls have showed a tight race in what would normally be a red state with Republicans winning most of the major offices. But Kansas has had Democratic governors before, and Davis hopes it will again. Of course, the governor says his economic plan is working. He says job growth is coming. There are more jobs and more students and more teachers being hired to teach those students. But I found an interesting statistic today. Of course, all the polls are saying that this is going to be a very tight race. But in the past 6 governor's races, okay, the past 6 governor's races since 1990, the average margin of victory, Democrat or Republican, has been 22%. 22% difference. We're not expecting that tonight. We're expecting this to be a very tight race. Of course, we'll be here all evening long at the docking, or I should say at the Davis Docking Watch Party here in Lawrence. We're live in Lawrence. Mike Ewan, Cake News.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike. Well, the midterm elections, not all about candidates. There are important issues being decided. And one of those, of course, right here in Wichita is the 1-cent sales tax question. Cake's Chris Frank live in downtown Wichita with that. Hey, Chris.
Good afternoon, Susan and Larry. We're live at City Hall. Of course, city leaders backing that retail sales tax. Wichita voters are deciding today whether to approve a citywide 1-cent retail sales tax. We've been showing you in reports in recent weeks the meetings held for and against the sales tax. In summary, the 1-cent sales tax proposal would collect about $400 million. It has a sunset to end in 5 years or before if the goal is reached earlier. The 4 initiatives would, 1, expand the water source at an approximately $250 million cost. 2, economic or job development at $80 million. 3, bus transit improvements, about $40 million. And 4, street maintenance at about $28 million. The group Citizens for a Better Wichita opposed the tax, saying the city doesn't really have a concrete plan on how to spend the money. We'll be watching that vote and talking to both sides this evening at their watch parties, which are being held in downtown locations. We're live in downtown Wichita. Chris Frank, Cake News.
And of course, other races we will be tracking: the Sedgwick County 4th District race between Richard Ranzow and Melody McCrae Miller, the race for Secretary of State between Chris Kobach and Gene Schodorf, and the race for Kansas Attorney General between Derek Schmidt and A.J. Kotich.
Stay with Cake News for complete election coverage. We have reporters across the state, as you just saw, tracking all the top races and candidates. Also, you can find updated election results at cakelandvotes.com or download the Cake News app to get election results on your smartphone. Meanwhile, we are tracking some breaking news, a decision in the gay marriage debate in Kansas.
Yeah, a federal judge now ordering Kansas to allow same-sex couples to marry, but the judge delaying enforcement of the order until next week to give the state time to appeal that decision.
Always tracking, always alerting, always protecting. Cake First Alert.
Well, we've had a very stubborn layer of clouds hanging over the southeastern half of the state today, but a view from our Emprise Bank Cake Cam looking off to the north and west from downtown shows the edge of that cloud cover about 70, 80 miles or so north and west of Wichita. We're at 53 now in the city. Northwest winds 3 miles per hour. There's the back edge. Mostly sunny skies, northwestern third of our state. Clouds, but nothing in the way of precipitation. Southeastern 2/3 of Kansas. West breezes are light today, so at least we lost the wind. 53 in Hutch and Wichita, 55 Salina and Great Bend. A few low 60s in the far northwest where we've had sunshine most of the day. It's going to be a slow process, but I expect breaks in the cloud cover as we head through the evening hours. Temperatures into the mid 40s by 10 p.m. Most of us are headed for 30s for overnight lows tonight, but we're going to have some sunshine back for Wednesday and probably the second half of the week. More on that here in just a bit.
Ben, thanks. Well, a chase ends in a crash that leaves 4 people seriously hurt. That chase ended at Pawnee and George Washington Boulevard. Sheriff's deputies were chasing 2 people suspected of stealing a car. 2 people in each car were hurt, including a 16-month-old girl, her 34-year-old father, and the 2 suspects, a 22-year-old man and a 32-year-old woman.
We've got new details in the airport tragedy. The Regional Forensic Science Center has now formally identified 3 of the 4 people killed in last week's plane crash at Mid-Continent Airport. The victims include pilot 53-year-old Mark Goldstein, 48-year-old Natalia Menestrina, and 78-year-old Jay Ferguson. The identity of the 4th victim has yet to be confirmed.